Under the leadership of Mayors David Holt and G.T. Bynum, both Oklahoma City and Tulsa are experiencing solid growth and optimistic futures. This week, we got the two mayors together to talk about their successes and the challenges ahead. Here's Moderator Cassidy with our weekly in-depth conversation.
Thank you, Rich. Joining me now is David Holt, the mayor of Oklahoma City, and Mayor G.T. Bynum from Tulsa. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
I want to start off with a question for both of you. We all know about this perceived rivalry and competitiveness between folks that live in Oklahoma City and people that live in Tulsa. Mayor Holt, in your mind, is that real? And if so, in what ways?
Well, I mean, it probably was real for a long time, and some of it can just be fun and friendly, but some of it was probably truly counterproductive because those rivalries would play out in a real way at the state capitol or in economic development conversations, and probably both cities were essentially losing in that game. Mayor Bynum and I, we had known each other for 20 years before we became mayors of our hometowns. And so when that happened, we decided that it was really in the state's best interest and in our city's best interest to strike a different tone. And some of that's symbolic, right? I mean, some of it is just like, let's just lead by example. Let's be partners. Let's talk well of each other. Let's show up to each other's state of the city addresses. Let's kind of treat this more like a collegial partnership between Oklahoma's two major cities instead of maybe the rivalry that it had been previously. And we carried that out. And now, I've been in office almost 6 years. He's in his eighth and final year. And it's really been a wonderful new tone. And I think that you see other people adopting it. Again, we can't control everything, but I think that we've set a different tone for how the metros should treat each other and work together. And hopefully that's played out in numerous ways at the Capitol and elsewhere. And then obviously, we don't have to, this is a story unto itself, but during the pandemic, it was more than just symbolic. I mean, it really became a very material policy-making partnership that, as we can both document in our cities, literally saved thousands of lives because we realized that our two metros had to move in the same way and at the same time if the actions were going to be credible to combat COVID-19. And that was something we obviously didn't anticipate when we both took office, but ultimately was a perfect opportunity to manifest our partnership.
Mayor Bynum, would you agree with Mayor Holt's statements?
Oh, 100%. I think even just from a personal standpoint, it would have been fairly ridiculous for us to be trying to one-up one another. But the reality is, I think we both realize that both of our cities benefit from closer collaboration. The reality is we are not large enough to have the kind of rivalry that people used to claim, nor are we far enough apart. I think a lot of folks in Oklahoma think being an hour apart is like this giant difference, but that's a daily commute if you live on the coastal United States. And so, as Mayor Holt pointed out, I mean, early on in our times in office, we really focused on more like symbolic things we could do. I would say we put a heavy emphasis on it from an economic development standpoint. When we have people who are looking to locate a business here in Tulsa, we're telling them about the Thunder. We're telling them about Bricktown and the riverfront in Oklahoma City. And our hope is that when Mayor Holt is pitching prospects in Oklahoma City, he's talking about the Gathering Place and USA BMX and Gilcrease Museum. And so we think we can be more effective economic development advocates for our communities if we're marketing the benefits of both metro areas rather than talking about them like we're thousands of miles apart. And then, as Mayor Holt pointed out, I think probably the closest that he and I have worked together on a daily basis was in response to COVID-19. And that was a case where I would say for the first 2 months at least of that pandemic, he and I were talking together on the phone 3 to 4 times a day. And none of the regulations that we put in place were different. He and I talked in advance to make sure that when we were announcing something, if he was going to announce something in Oklahoma City, I would be announcing it around the same time in Tulsa and vice versa, so that folks in Oklahoma's two largest cities knew we weren't asking people in Tulsa to do something that people in Oklahoma City didn't have to do, or the other way around. And I think coordinating it in that way, as Mayor Holt said, saved thousands of lives. Those folks aren't aware that we saved their life by doing that, but it was a true life-saving effort. And I think moving forward, if you look around the world, the cities that are growing the fastest and achieving the greatest outcomes are not cities that are trying to do it all by themselves. They're cities that are working as regions. We need look no further than Dallas, Fort Worth, or the Baltimore, Washington area, or New York and Newark, or out in Silicon Valley. All of these are regions that are working together. And I think we can be more economically successful in Oklahoma when Oklahoma City and Tulsa are on the same page.
Well, and outside of the pandemic, what are some other ways that we've seen Tulsa and Oklahoma City collaborate?
Well, I think he did a good job of sort of summarizing that. I think that, and I think that one thing that maybe we didn't get into, but in more depth, that probably deserves a little more illumination, is how much we already are, but need to continue to work together at the Capitol. Really what Oklahoma City and Tulsa largely want from our state legislature is to be left alone. We have both proven that we know we have figured out how to invest in ourselves. We would love more probably infrastructure support from the state government, but that's not historically been a major source for Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And most of the time, we just think that if we could just be left to our own devices, our taxpayers have shown a confidence in our government and a confidence in investing in ourselves and a confidence in self-governance in general. And, I think that Oklahoma City and Tulsa obviously have more voting power in the legislature if our delegations and our mayors and our citizens are working together. All too often in the history of our state's politics, it's been like there's three groups: Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and everybody else, rural Oklahoma. And those numbers don't work for Oklahoma City and Tulsa. We've been divided and conquered, and so we need to work together. And I think maybe that's the last thing that he didn't cover in depth that is really important about this relationship.
Mayor Bynum, by the time that you leave office, who would you like to see sitting in your seat?
Oh, I am studiously avoiding taking sides in the mayor's race in Tulsa this year. The key thing for me is that I want whoever wins the mayor's race to feel like they are set up for success. And so I've invited all of the major candidates to come and meet off the record with our departmental leadership here at the city of Tulsa so they can ask them any questions off the record that they want as they're forming their platforms for their candidacy. I have an open line of communication with all of the candidates, and I'm building into my budget for the coming year a transition fund so that whoever wins has the ability to fund their transition. And when I was elected mayor, I had to go out and raise money for my transition, and really did not necessarily, and I had run against my predecessor, so it's understandable, but did not have a tremendous amount of support in that transition. And it's really important that whoever comes in as mayor be able to hit the ground running. And so my main focus is on doing everything I can, building up our team this year, giving them a budget with a surplus when they come into office, which is something that traditionally mayors in Tulsa do not inherit, and really making it so they are going to be as successful. They're keyed up to be as successful as possible, because when the mayor of Tulsa can be successful, everybody in the community benefits from that.
What are your hopes for the next mayor of Tulsa?
Well, I think the big thing for me, and I will speak to this because you asked, I thought your question to Mayor Holt a minute ago was really great about the other ways that we've worked together. And I'll just speak for us here in Tulsa. I think that for us, we've taken a great deal of inspiration from the success of Oklahoma City in investing in itself. And that is something that I think Oklahoma City woke up to about at least a decade before we did in Tulsa. When they passed maps, we were failing to pass capital improvement programs. And what I think Oklahoma City proved out is that when you invest in yourself, the population growth, the economic development, it comes. That is a natural aftermath of a community that has confidence in itself and is aiming to be a nationally and globally competitive city like Oklahoma City did. And so for us, when Oklahoma City was passing these initiatives, at least for me, it wasn't, oh, I wish that had failed. It was, wow, what they're going to be able to do in OKC is amazing. We ought to be doing that here in Tulsa as well. And I feel like that has just continued as subsequent versions of maps have been passed. We've passed a couple versions of what we call Vision Tulsa in Tulsa. And so my hope for the next mayor, when I ran, there were two main reasons I ran. But one of them, and a big one, was my worry that Tulsans had just become comfortable with this notion of managing decline, like thinking that we were a once great city, our best days are behind us, and now we're going to manage decline. I hope, and I think the biggest thing that we've done in my time in office is turn that around. So people in Tulsa today expect to be among the best, expect to compete with the best cities in the world. And my hope is that the next mayor will continue that kind of ambition and confidence for our city and do the things that allow us to be a truly globally competitive city.
Well, we're just about out of time here. There are a couple more points that I would like to talk on. This one, do you feel that cities like Tulsa and Oklahoma City have a role to play in helping to support the rural communities that surround the Mayor Holt? What do you think?
Well, I think we do it indirectly. I mean, obviously, our first obligation is to our own residents, and I've got 700,000 of them. And, we have to provide services to them. And it's not as if we are swimming in so much cash that we can share it. But I think we do support those communities in numerous ways. I think we support them by being the economic engines of the state. I am sure it is true that a disproportionate number of income tax dollars are coming out of Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And those are ultimately all of those income tax dollars are going to the state of Oklahoma. And then, of course, the state of Oklahoma also collects sales tax. And again, I would strongly suspect that a disproportionate number of those dollars are coming out of Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So I think by continuing to do what we do, continuing to produce, the most of the GDP for the state of Oklahoma and our two communities, we are giving the state government the resources that it then utilizes to support other communities. So I think the role we play happens organically, and we support that. I mean, to GT's point about not wishing ill for Oklahoma City, but wishing for his own community to raise its game. That's how all of this should work. Everybody should be competitive, but in a healthy way. Like, okay, well, they're doing that. I want to match that standard in our own way, right? And I hope that that's how the whole state feels, that we're all sort of pushing each other to higher levels of excellence and not trying to drag each other down out of resentment, and certainly, so I know that GT and I, we want Ardmore to succeed, and we want the Panhandle to succeed, and we want Idabel to succeed. I mean, we want all of these communities to succeed because that's going to be good for all of us.
Mayor Bynum, do you have any final thoughts on that topic?
We should not fear growth in rural areas that surround Tulsa. We should be hoping for it and rooting for it, because when you have population growth and economic growth in those areas, the core city, if you're taking care of business, it will benefit from that. And so we've been big advocates of helping our neighbors in the region when they have economic prospects. Even if they're not looking at Tulsa, I'll go meet with them and tell them why that city is a great place for them, or that town is a great place for them to locate, knowing that it will benefit us. So I think, to Mayor Holt's point, when the core cities are taking care of their business and are supportive of regional growth, everybody benefits from that.
Mayor Bynum, Mayor Holt, thank you both so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. Thank you to the mayors for giving us their valuable time.